My dad left my ailing mom and me for his online girlfriend. Now that he is conned, he has come back asking for forgiveness, but my mom wants a divorce. I, 28M, never thought I'd be in this situation. My whole world was turned upside down last year when my mom, 56F, was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. It was a shock to our entire family. My dad, 58M, and I were devastated. We always thought mom was invincible. She was the glue that held our family together, always taking care of everyone else. Now, suddenly, she was the one who needed to be taken care of. The decision was made for me to move back home to help out. My job was able to be done remotely, so it wasn't a big issue career-wise. I thought it would be temporary, maybe a few months at most. Little did I know that over a year later I'd still be here, and everything would have changed so significantly. At first, things were okay. It was tough seeing Mom so sick from the chemo, but we all pulled together. Dad and I took turns taking her to appointments, making sure she ate, and helping her around the house. It was exhausting, but it felt like we were a team. As the months went by, though, I started to notice changes in Dad. He seemed more distant, always on his phone. When I'd ask him about it, I was told it was just work stuff. I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured he was just stressed about Mom and trying to keep things going at his job. Mom's condition started to improve slightly after about 8 months. She wasn't cancer-free, but the treatments were working. She was still mostly bedridden, needing a lot of care, but there was hope. I thought things would get better from there. I was wrong. One day, about 2 months ago, I came home from a quick grocery run to find Dad packing his bags. When I asked what was going on, I was told he was leaving. Just like that. He said he couldn't handle it anymore, that he'd met someone online who made him feel alive again. He was moving to another state to be with her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My dad, who had been married to my mom for 30 years, was walking out on us when we needed him most. I was in shock. I asked about Mom, about his responsibilities. He just shrugged and said I could handle it. He said he'd send money to help out, but he needed to live his own life. Before I could even process what was happening, he was gone. Just like that, our family was torn apart. I was left alone to care for my sick mother, who was heartbroken and confused. How was I supposed to tell her that her husband of 3 decades had abandoned her for some woman he met online? The past 2 months have been a blur. I've been trying to keep it together for Mom's sake, but it's been incredibly hard. I'm angry, hurt, and overwhelmed. I've had to take on all the responsibilities that used to be shared between Dad and me. It's affecting my work, my social life, and my mental health. Dad has tried to call a few times, but I haven't answered. He's sent a few texts asking how Mom is doing, but I haven't responded. I'm too angry to talk to him. I feel like he doesn't deserve to know how we're doing when he chose to walk out on us. Some of my relatives have been telling me that I should at least talk to Dad, that cutting him off completely isn't the answer. They say he's still my father and that I might regret it if I don't at least hear him out, but I can't bring myself to do it. Every time I think about what he did, I feel sick to my stomach. I know Mom misses him, even though she tries not to show it. She hasn't asked me to contact him, but I can see the pain in her eyes when she looks at old family photos. It breaks my heart to see her like this, battling cancer and a broken heart at the same time. This situation has made me question everything I thought I knew about family and loyalty. I never imagined my dad could do something like this. It's made me reevaluate my relationship with him and wonder if I ever really knew him at all. The stress of the situation has been taking its toll on me. I find myself snapping at people more easily, having trouble sleeping and feeling constantly anxious. I know I need to take care of myself too, but it's hard when Mom needs so much care. I feel guilty anytime I do something for myself, like I'm being selfish. I've tried to reach out to friends for support, but it's hard for them to understand what I'm going through. Most of them are at different stages in their lives, focused on careers or starting families. They try to be supportive, but there's only so much they can do or say. I've thought about trying to find a support group for people in similar situations, but between work and caring for Mom, I barely have time to breathe, let alone attend meetings. I know I should probably see a therapist, but again, time and energy are in short supply. I worry about the future, about what will happen if Mom's condition worsens again. Will I be able to handle it on my own? Will I have to quit my job to care for her full time? These thoughts keep me up at night, adding to the stress and exhaustion. I miss the way things used to be. I miss our family dinners, the holidays we spent together, the sense of security I used to feel. Now everything feels uncertain and fragile. I'm afraid to hope for better days because I don't want to be disappointed again. Certainly, I'll write an update to the AITA post with the scenario you described. Here's the continuation. Update. It's been about a month since my original post, and I wanted to give an update on the situation. First, I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments and advice. It really helped me feel less alone in all of this. Things with Mom have been pretty much the same. Her condition hasn't gotten worse, which is good, but she's still mostly bedridden and needs a lot of care. I've been doing my best to keep up with everything, but it's still overwhelming most days. Now, for the update. Something happened yesterday that I'm still trying to process, and I could use some outside perspective. My phone rang in the afternoon. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway, thinking it might be one of Mom's doctors. It wasn't. It was my dad. At first, I was too shocked to say anything. He started talking like nothing had happened, asking how I was doing, how Mom was. I just listened, feeling my anger building with every word. Then he got to the real reason for his call. He asked if he could borrow some money. Apparently, things weren't working out so well with his new girlfriend, and he was having some financial difficulties. He had the audacity to say he wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I lost it. All the anger and hurt I'd been holding in for months came pouring out. I yelled at him, asking how he could even think about asking me for money after what he did. I told him he had no right to call and ask for favors when he'd abandoned us when we needed him most. He tried to defend himself, saying he was going through a hard time too, that he still cared about us. But I wasn't having it. I told him that if he cared, he wouldn't have left in the first place. I said some pretty harsh things that I won't repeat here. In the end, I told him not to call me again unless it was an absolute emergency. I said I didn't want his money, his excuses, or anything else from him. Then I hung up. After the call, I was shaking with anger. I felt justified in the moment, but now I'm not so sure. Part of me feels guilty for lashing out like that, but another part feels like he deserved it. Mom could tell something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the call. I don't want to cause her any more pain than she's already in. Update. It's been another month since my last update, and once again, I find myself here seeking advice. The situation with my dad has taken yet another unexpected turn, and I'm struggling to process my feelings about it all. Yesterday evening, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened it, I was shocked to see my dad standing there, looking disheveled and exhausted. He had a small suitcase with him and a defeated look on his face. Before I could say anything, he started explaining. It turned out that his online girlfriend, the one he left us for, was actually a con artist. She had been scamming him this whole time, slowly draining his bank accounts and maxing out his credit cards. When he finally realized what was happening and confronted her, she disappeared with all the money she had taken from him. As he was telling me this, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction that he had gotten what he deserved. Another part felt pity seeing him so broken. But mostly, I felt angry that he thought he could just show up and expect things to go back to normal. When he finished his story, he asked if he could come in and talk to Mom. He said he wanted to apologize and try to make things right. That's when I lost it. I told him in no uncertain terms that he wasn't welcome in our home. I reminded him that he had made his choice when he walked out on us during Mom's cancer treatment. I said that he couldn't just come back now that things hadn't worked out for him. He tried to argue, saying he had made a mistake and wanted to make amends. He said he had nowhere else to go. But I stood my ground. I told him that his mistakes weren't our problem anymore, and that he needed to find somewhere else to stay. The look on his face when I said this, it was like watching him break all over again. For a moment, I almost wavered. But then I remembered all the nights I had spent comforting Mom, all the doctor's appointments I had taken her to alone, all the stress and pain we had gone through because of his selfish actions. In the end, I told him I would let Mom know he had come by, but it would be up to her if she wanted to talk to him. I suggested he find a hotel or reach out to other family members for a place to stay. Then I closed the door. After he left, I broke down. The stress of the past few months, the shock of seeing him again, the conflict of turning him away, it all hit me at once. I'm still not sure if I did the right thing. I haven't told Mom about Dad's visit yet. I don't know how. Part of me thinks she has a right to know, but another part wants to protect her from more stress and heartache. Should I have let him stay? Should I tell Mom about his visit? I feel like I'm in over my head. and I could really use some outside perspective on this. Update. It's been a week since my dad showed up at our doorstep, and I've been wrestling with whether or not to tell Mom about it. The guilt of keeping it from her was eating me up inside, and I knew I couldn't go on like this. So yesterday, I finally gathered the courage to tell her everything. I sat down next to her bed and told her I had something important to share. I started from the beginning, telling her about Dad's call asking for money, and then about his recent visit. I explained how he'd been conned by the woman he left us for, and that he had come back looking for a place to stay. As I was talking, I watched Mom's face carefully, afraid of causing her more pain. But to my surprise, she remained calm throughout my explanation. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then she did something I didn't expect. She asked to speak with Dad. I was shocked. After everything he'd put us through, I couldn't understand why she'd want to talk to him. When I asked her why, she simply said, "I need to hear it from him. I need to say my piece, one last time." At first, I was hesitant. I didn't want Dad to hurt her again, but Mom was insistent, and I realized that maybe this was something she needed for closure. So, I agreed to arrange it. I called Dad and told him Mom wanted to talk to him. He sounded surprised, but agreed to come over the next day. I made it clear that this didn't mean he was welcome to stay, but that Mom wanted to speak with him. Now I'm anxiously waiting for tomorrow to come. I don't know what Mom plans to say to Dad, or how this conversation will go. Part of me is worried about how it will affect her health, but another part hopes that maybe this will provide some resolution for her. I'm planning to be in the house during their talk, just in case Mom needs me. But I've promised to give them privacy unless Mom calls for me. I'm feeling a mix of emotions right now, nervous about what tomorrow might bring, relieved that I've finally told Mom the truth, and uncertain about what this means for our family going forward. I'm looking for advice on how to handle this situation. How do I support Mom through this? How do I deal with Dad being in our house again, even if it's just for a short time? And how do I prepare myself for whatever outcome this conversation might have? Any thoughts or advice would be greatly appreciated. This whole situation still feels surreal, and I'm just trying to navigate it the best I can. Update. It's been a few days since my last update, and I felt I needed to share what happened when my dad came to talk to Mom. The conversation didn't go as I expected, and I'm still processing everything that happened. Dad arrived at the house yesterday afternoon. I let him in, reminding him that this wasn't a reconciliation, just a chance for Mom to say what she needed to say. He nodded, looking nervous as I led him to Mom's room. I stayed just outside the door, close enough to hear if Mom needed me, but far enough to give them privacy. What I heard next was something I never expected from my usually calm and soft-spoken mother. As soon as Dad entered the room, Mom unleashed years of pent-up emotions. Her voice, though weak from her illness, carried a strength I hadn't heard in months. She demanded to know how he could leave her and me when we needed him most. She reminded him of their 30 years of marriage, of all the times she had stood by him through thick and thin. "How could you abandon us for another woman?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I was fighting for my life, and you chose to walk away. Do you have any idea what that did to me? To our son?" Dad tried to interject, to explain about being conned, but Mom wouldn't let him speak. She told him about the sleepless nights, the fear of dying alone, the pain of feeling betrayed by the one person she trusted most in the world. "I gave you my youth, my love, my everything," she said, "and when I needed you most, you weren't there." Then her voice became eerily calm. "I've had a lot of time to think while lying in this bed," she said, "and I've made a decision. I want a divorce." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear Dad's sharp intake of breath. "But," he started to say. "No," Mom interrupted. "There's nothing left to say. I never want to see you again. Please leave." I heard movement in the room and quickly stepped away from the door. Dad emerged, his face pale and eyes red. Without a word, he walked past me and out of the house. After he left, I went to check on Mom. She was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down her face. When she saw me, she tried to smile. "It's over," she whispered. "I'm free." I held her hand as she cried, feeling a mix of sadness for what our family had been and relief that Mom had found the strength to stand up for herself. The next few days and weeks are going to be challenging as we navigate this new reality. We'll need to start the divorce process, figure out the legal and financial implications, and continue to focus on Mom's health. But for the first time in months, I feel like we're moving forward instead of just treading water. Mom seems lighter somehow, like a weight has been lifted off her shoulders. I want to thank everyone who's followed our story and offered advice and support. Your words have been a source of strength during this difficult time. As for me, I'm coming to terms with the fact that our family will never be the same. But maybe, just maybe, we can build something new and stronger from the ashes of what we've lost.